A Very Weasley Christmas by Flying is a Better Word for Falling. Summary. Oi, stop it, Harry. Harry blinked at him, not as innocent as he seemingly wanted to appear because, well, Ron was his best friend. He knew that expression all too well. What is it with you and flirting with my family? In a few hours, the entire family, as well as their guests, would be running around the house, helping Molly Weasley with her plans to decorate the house, which in fact meant keeping George and his fiancée away from her most beloved decorative items before they tried to cast a spell over them. Well, most of the time Angelina did not in fact help George, still neither did she stop him in his attempts to sabotage his mother's ornaments, which she had made herself to be put on the tree. For now, it was still quiet, or at least as quiet as it could get, when most of the Weasleys were home to celebrate Christmas together. Hermione was standing in the kitchen helping Ginny and Fleur. Together they were baking cookies the Muggle way. One could not help the faint blush when he saw his girlfriend was flowering her hair, even though she had already tied it up in a bushy ponytail. Her carefree grin when she looked up and saw him watching her made him smile even more. Then his attention went back to his best friend, who was handing the bread basket to one of his siblings. His older brother kept grinning back at Harry when he directed a wicked grin at him. The sort of grin most girls used to swoon over when they went to Hogwarts, especially when the boy who lived was the person behind it. Oi, stop it, Harry! Harry blinked at him, not as innocent as he seemingly wanted to appear, because, well, Ron was his best friend. He knew that expression all too well. What is it with you and flirting with my family? At that, Charlie, who of course had been watching them, mostly because he was the one Ron was talking about, burst out laughing. Somewhat bewildered, Ron now looked at his older brother, while Harry simply shrugged. As far as he knew, Charlie was not even interested in any kind of relationship, romantic or otherwise. What was it with Harry that constantly got Ron to question whether he was the only mostly straight Weasley sibling? It did not end at that. Of course it did not. If Harry, by whom he was not sure if he actually did it on purpose, and even more so his siblings thought they could annoy Ron, they would take every chance they could. Thus, Ron witnessed his best friend not only flirting with his only sister, who flirted back every single time, even though her and Harry did have a rather complicated romantic backstory. Still, she seemed to enjoy herself, and as her brother, he hoped she would find happiness, maybe even with Harry, who was once again fluttering his eyes at yet another one of his siblings. Together, they were finally decorating the Christmas tree that had been set up in the living room area. It was not exactly the biggest tree, but Hermione had asked if they could decorate it the way she and her parents would have done when she had been younger. Way back in her childhood, when the most magical things she could dream of, in which she even then had not actually believed in due to her parents' occupation and Father Christmas. Besides, she could always enlarge the tree a little, should someone ask her to do so. Molly had agreed to let the children help, the children of her own children, she added in an almost overly sentimental tone, and after that she kept running around with a beatific smile. Especially after little Teddy had started to change the colors of his hair according to the baubles Harry held up, showing them to the toddler and his grandmother before he hung them. Molly and Andromeda exchanged subtle and yet delighted smiles nearly every time it happened. And even Arthur, who had been instructed to collect the emptied boxes and put them back where they belonged, could not help but grin a little every time the young child grabbed excitedly for his godfather's or one of the other person's fingers whenever they were within grasp. Even George helped, without causing havoc. Just like the others, he was simply too distracted by the happy cackling noise Teddy made whenever he handed him the snitch cuddly toy, only to let it fall or throw it back at him again. You've been amazing, Dad. Not as amazing as his godfather. You're practically his dad now, Harry. At that, Harry seemed to remember George's light-hearted comment having obviously awoken memories of his own godfather, as well as Teddy's actual father and mother. They all remembered, all of them, at the strangest times, and yet it was Christmas. Harry was supposed to be happy with his blended family. Ron patted his shoulder in passing, when he handed George one of the tinsel boxes. It did not take long before Harry got a mischievous glint in his eyes again, practically beaming at George, who started to grin, Ron almost awkwardly standing between them. You'd be so amazing, George, and so would Angelina. Together you two would be extremely funny and intelligent parents, and awfully attractive ones as well. Ron tried not to wince at it almost hastily added part. That was his brother and his soon-to-be sister-in-law Harry was talking about. The black hair and the green eyes combination you have going on is much more handsome, says the keen athlete. Seriously, have you seen your legs? And after that, Harry had the nerve to smirk, and Ron groaned in frustration, while his father simply coughed awkwardly, a faint blush colouring the tips of his ear. Arthur was suddenly looking at the boxes in his hands as if they were the most interesting inventions made by muggles, while his wife put one hand on Andromeda's shoulder. The two women shared a knowing smile, silently amused by the youthful banter. "Could you two at least take this somewhere else?" Ron more or less groaned. "Can't help it that he's hot." The two of them answered without missing a beat, and Ron grumbled that there was a child present, even more so their parents. "I know, little brother dear. You can always leave the grown-ups alone if you want to go," George answered with a smug grin. "Sort of." "Ron, no swearing in front of my godson." From then on, the entire week before Christmas only got worse. Ron had never had a problem with his best friend liking girls and blokes equally, and yet in his opinion the former boy who lived tended to go a little overboard, literally leaned a little too far over his broom, with him even flirting with most of his best friend's family. "Harry, by Merlin, what are you wearing?" Seeing the other young man in a sweater with a prominent knitted capital B on the front was exactly what caused Ron's reaction, and in fact got him to slightly panic. Sleepily, Harry looked down at his clothes. Seemingly not seeing anything out of the ordinary, he blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" Before he could question why Harry was wearing his oldest brother's sweater, not that he had not done that years ago before, once in a while switching clothes with his sibling to annoy Ron with the nagging question which one of them he was actually going out with, said Weasley came rushing down the stairs, also wearing an item of clothes that most definitely did not belong to him. "Morning," he greeted the people already sitting down for breakfast, before looking the black-haired man who was still standing next to his chair up and down. "You did not have to dress in such a hurry. You know you could have waited, love." Ron simply shrieked, noticing the exchange of glances between the other two men before him, before Bill, actually, honest to Merlin, giggled. "Your face, brother dear." He stood there, dumbfounded, now clearly remembering the time years ago Harry had come down for breakfast wearing a different sweater each morning. Even now he had fallen for it, again. "Worth it. And hey, Bill?" Bill looked up from where he had sat down to butter a slice of toast. "Harry, you look good in my clothes." Ron, having found his voice again, and also managing an only partly fraught eye roll, decided it was time to play along for once. "God damn it, you can't take all my siblings, Harry." "Don't worry, Ron, you can keep Percy." Someone, having already sat down beside them, cleared their throat. There, showing off his bad hair, sat one of the best former Gryffindor Quidditch captains Ron and most of the other around him had ever seen. Not that the ones he also knew were not equally as great. He was currently clad in pajama trousers and a sweater, clothes that also could not be his. "Never mind," Harry said once again, with that faintly mischievous glint in his eyes. "They all dig Quidditch players, especially me." Ron let out a tormented breath, shaking his head. "I hate you all, mostly you, Harry." "Not true, you love me." "That's the problem, you git." The end. Thank you for listening to A Very Weasley Christmas by Flying is a Better Word for Falling. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on AO3, YouTube or Spotify.